where you are, check out Providence Elder Place PACE. This program offers healthcare, housing, transportation, and recreational activities. There are no copays or deductibles, and it's covered through Medicare and Medicaid. Providence Elder Place PACE works to keep you healthy and in your home. Call 206-320-5325 or visit providence.org Elder Place. Providence.org Elder Place.
We got the feeling now. Yeah.
R&B, soul, funk, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We give you all that and more on Star Time. Join me, Paul Pearson, for a 2-hour trip through the history of R&B. A new episode every week on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Come and get the feeling on Star Time on Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Phil-Am Radio, servicing the Filipino and Filipino Americans all over the world. Phil-Am Radio, streaming live in the internet every Tuesday from 1 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. Shuttle USA time. We are your host, Kuya Bert Kawili, Emma Heron, and
Manny Panganiban.
Phil-Am Radio.
There is no secret why Downbeat Magazine calls this Seattle's most important annual jazz event. The 33rd annual Earshot Jazz Festival hits Seattle stages October with one-of-a-kind live jazz performances and video live streams all the way through November 7th. This year's Earshot Jazz Festival features established masters like Diane Reeves, Chuco Valdez, Dee Daniel, and red-hot young stars like Theo Croker, Emmanuel Wilkins, and Samara Joy, celebrating both Seattle's history and its future in the world of jazz. Earshot teams up with community partners like Langston, the Royal, and
American culture and keynote speaker.
Tickets and more information are available online at earshot.org. That's earshot.org. Once again, Seattle's most important annual jazz event. Earshot Jazz Festival, hitting stages early October all the way through November 7th. Call for more information.
This is Rainier Avenue Radio World.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Good afternoon, Seattle. This is Monique Lee from the Afternoons with Monique show. You are on Rainier Avenue Radio. Today, I have the pleasure of inviting a local artist, Miss Barbara Earl Thomas. She's an American visual artist, writer, art administrator, lecturer on art and contemporary American culture, and keynote speaker. Please help me welcome to Afternoons with Monique, Miss Barbara Earl Thomas.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm just great. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I understand that you are now in Seattle, but let's get to know you. Let's our audience get to know your background, how you got interested in art, and were you born and raised in Washington State?
I was. I am the first generation of my family that moved here from the South, born in the Northwest. So my family's primarily from Texas and Louisiana, but I was born in Seattle. I've lived other places, but my studio's here, so I've been working here for a long time.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on the show. I don't often have artists on the show, a lot of politicians and legal people, but I like to mix in, the art in my world and in the audience world. So share with us, how did you get started and interested in art to become an artist as you are today?
Well, I think I like to tell people that I grew up in a household, as many people from my generation, especially, where when you were in your home and you needed something and you were making your home beautiful, you didn't have lots of money, but we were always embroidering. We were always, if you needed something, you built it, you made it, you created it in your home, and then you used it. And I think because of that experience, and because I come from a making kind of a family, it was natural for me to want to look out into the world and create things from the things I'd seen. And I come from a storytelling family, so we would always tell stories, at least my family, my parents, my grandparents. So I'm used to hearing stories about the days in which I didn't exist. And so it's very natural for me to retell those stories.
Well, you have numerous national exhibits to your name, and your art form, and I'm quoting, build tension, fill narratives through paper cut and print. Um, would you explain to our audience what that means?
Well, I mean, I guess without them looking at it, because certainly it's a visual medium. So I have two exhibits right now. One is at the Seattle Art Museum, and it's called the Geography of Innocence, and it's up through January the 2nd. And I have another exhibit that's at the Henry Gallery at the University of Washington on campus, and it's up through the end of April. And I do paper cuts, and I try to hold my audience by making the image interesting. And the way you make anything interesting is you draw people in and then you create a little tension. It's a little drama. And so I try to make these small dramas that keep people interested in looking. And I don't think it's that different from what you do. You have politicians and legal people on, and they're talking about their problems and their ways they're going to try to overcome them. So that's what I'm doing in my work, visual work.
I'm asking my producer to pull up the art so that people get some visual of some of the work that you've done, as you have done many variety. There you go. Thank you, Dan. That's our producer, Dan Bells. He's behind the scene making things happen. So tell us about this piece a little bit. Let's our audience learn about your artwork and what it means.
Well, this is an older piece. And when I say older, I think it's about 6 years old. And it's a painting of birds falling through the sky. And one of the birds is holding a person. And I'm an amateur birder. So I just, my work isn't so complicated. I look out the window, I see birds, and I incorporate them in my work, but I also incorporate them in my storytelling. And this was a story about, in a sense, how fragile is the beauty of the bird, how fragile is the life of the child, in this case, the young Black child. And so I've sort of interspersed the body of the bird and the body of the child kind of falling through space. And then on the bottom, you see the bird and the body of the child sort of lying kind of in this celestial place. And I think I was just telling this very small story about why it's important to be careful and to take care of the things around you that are important to you.
Fragile and vulnerable.
Yes, exactly. Because I think that's our lives are both seem quite firm and sturdy, but they're also quite vulnerable. And I mean, that's what we're experiencing right now with the pandemic. Some small unseen thing is wreaking such havoc all around the world. And it makes you realize how chance and vulnerable our own existence is on the planet. That something small like that could take us all out.
Absolutely. Can you pull up another piece, Dan?
And, you might want to take from, the front of my website where the things are. Yeah, that's a piece that's one of my paper cuts. At the Seattle Art Museum, I have paper cuts that are large enough for a person to walk through. So that's what I did, starting with a piece like this. And I wanted to talk about light and shadow. And when I was doing these paper cuts, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if I made something that was big enough that you or I could stand inside of it? And that's what I've done at the Seattle Art Museum. and at the Henry is create paper cuts that create new worlds. So they're like installations, and they use light to animate them. And then on the surface of the paper cut, there are small stories, little dramas, like everyday life. Life is just a series of literally unconnected stories. But because we're humans, we make stories out of things, even things that don't necessarily connect. We need to do that in order to make sense of our time on the planet. What does life mean? And, I got up this morning, I put on my clothes, I went to my job, and something happened on my job. And those things are not necessarily connected, but at the end of the day, you're trying to figure out why I feel so wonderful or why I feel horrible. And then you make a story out of it. And you go like, well, I got there and someone said something and it connected to the morning, and all of a sudden you've got a drama.
Right.
And
it's part of our narrative on Earth.
It is. It's part of that.
The everyday, the moments.
And I think that's what I try to do, is take the very mundane moments and elevate them so people can see, it's not just that I got up this morning. It's not just that I managed to make it through. Making it through a whole day could be like making it through your whole life. And something that happens in one day is as consequential as something that happens in 60 years.
Right. Dan, can you pull up another piece? How big is this piece that we have in front of us here?
This is a piece of glass, and I'd say it's probably about 20 inches by high, and then maybe it's about 12 or 15 inches wide at the top, because it's wide and it goes down narrow. And this is a piece of blown glass, and then on the outside of the glass, I've actually created these little stories. And it's this, it's a person who's blowing wind, he's blowing the air, and he's kind of making weather. And he's making things blow over. He's making things stand up, which in a way for me is just a story in the round about what happens to us every day, getting blown from one place to the other, getting struck by lightning, because you could see there's lightning coming down.
Right.
And some people making it through and some people not.
Then the power of nature, it seems like.
Yeah. And again, it's the small story. And, you're in news and you're in everyday events. And these are the things that make up how we make it through.
It seems like there are some Japanese influence to this, because I've seen artwork from old Japanese artists that feature these not quite, there's completely different pieces of art, but the theme of showing human expression connected in nature, and the expressiveness of the face on this piece is kind of and the cloud and the thunder that is expressed on this piece of blown art. By the way, are these dark lines edges on the blown glass?
Yeah, well, it's sandblasted. The image is sandblasted. I wrap it, then I cut the image into it, and then I take it and it's sandblasted. And so every place where the sand hits the glass, you see the clear, and every place where it's black, that's where the tape remains. So
what influenced your work, if I may ask?
Well, you talked about that things have that sort of Japanese feel. Well, I'm from Seattle and I'm on the Pacific Rim. I'm surrounded by the aesthetic.
The global
and that aesthetic. And, in my life, that aesthetic is very much a part of my life.
Right.
Being here in Seattle, with whether it's friends or whether it's just the things I've seen. So I'm influenced by, I think, and I don't know if I'd say Japanese as much as I'd say the sort of Asian aesthetic, because it's kind of formal and it's sometimes very graphic, and I am drawn to that. So I come by it honestly. I don't come in here and say, oh, I'm going to do something Japanese influenced. I just come in here and say, these are the skills I have. These are the ways I like to do it. This is the things that appeal to me. And so therefore, I'm going to use the style that I've developed. And my influences are many. I mean, I've studied lots of art history, but I like things that are graphic. Let's just say that.
Right.
I like things that are clean and clear
Mhm.
and bold, and that's part of the impulse in my
Expression.
narrative. Yeah.
Right. I asked Dan to pull up 6 pieces of yours so that I can share with our audience, and mainly our audience after this and re-air or rerun of the show on Sunday. It was the interview will be saved, archived only visually. So I want to be able to verbally describe what we see, so that when we save these footage, the audience get a sense of what we talked about. Dan, can you pull up another piece that Barbara? Okay, here we go. So what do we have here?
This piece is called The Reading Room, and it's a linoleum cut. And because, again, it's very graphic. I think it's from probably 2007, 2010. It's about the importance to me of what happens when you read. You go into a room and it's a quiet room, and all of a sudden you open the book and the room comes alive. Things fly around the room, they fall apart, because what's on the page animates your mind. And I wanted to have a visual description of what happens when I open a book and how I experience reading, and why I think it's so important that we, I don't know, I guess, reinforce that skill in our children, reinforce that skill in ourselves, because there's something about reading a book with paper on the page, not from your
internet device,
but that requires a certain kind of patience, and it requires discipline, but the payoff is so amazing. So you see at the top there, you see a horn, it's sort of like, Gabriel blowing his horn, announcing the world, or it's like the chicken that crows in the morning to wake you up. There are the books on the shelves. There are all the characters coming out of the book, and there's a figure there reading a book with its small child, and so that small child is kind of, we see what's happening inside that small child's mind as the parent is reading the book to that.
I love reading. It's like looking into a window of
Yes.
another story, another home, another situation, and you can learn so many perspectives and glean into emotions and character development and information. This is like novel reading, right?
Yes.
That we're talking about, and this is amazing. Dan, can you pull up another piece?
And I think it is like novel reading, and it's really great. This is a piece that's in the Seattle Art Museum show. This piece is called The Color Wheel, and this is actually one of my paper cuts that you spoke about. This is a paper cut. Underneath what you have is this printed color.
Oh, look at that.
So this is the paper that ends up underneath it. And so I get the paper and it's printed, and I order it. And then I move it around underneath my cuts to create the light that you see behind the figure. And so people sometimes, when they look at it, they don't know if it's glass, they don't know if it's paint, but what it is, it's paper.
Right.
And it's all paper. And then talk about tension. It's like you see the ruler, the yardstick behind. I've made it go like that.
Yes.
Makes your eye kind of tilt you a little bit and puts a little tension into the piece. And then I put the book titles all around the little boy. One is called Black Boy. The other one's called Notes of a Native Son. And the last one is Between the World and Me. And all of those titles are by authors that, if people were to know who those authors are, they understand that these books tell the story of a young Black boy's life in America. Black Boy is by Richard Wright. Notes of a Native Son is by James Baldwin. And Between the World and Me is by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And it's, current and contemporary. And it was my way of putting a literary allusion into this composition. And
I'm sorry. What is the ruler? Is there any significance to that?
Well, when the little boy was in my space and I was drawing him and then taking a photo of him, the ruler just happened to be behind him.
I see.
But at the same time, when you have a child and a child is growing, the child is always measuring his height. But the ruler is a metaphor for the value and the size and the
scale.
The scale of a human body and the human soul. So I have included that. And then you see I have the bird and I have the flowers. So all the things when I look out of my studio window where I am right now, those are the things I see.
Lovely. Dan, another piece, I think this would be the last one yes.
This is a piece called Nightlight. And these are all of the children in both of these are children of friends of mine. The first one was the grandson of one of my cousins. And these are the children of my studio assistant. And it was very interesting for me to depict them because I know them very well. And then also to put them into a drama, a daily drama that it's my drama. So Nightlight, you know what a nightlight is when you put those little lights you put in your bathroom, you put on the wall, in the bedroom, if the child is afraid or someone is nervous about the dark. And it's a symbol of kind of like, I'm going to give you a little safety in the dark. A little to our life. And so I think that that's what this piece is about, is when you have children and you're trying to keep them safe, you try to figure out all kinds of things, whether it's real magic or magical thinking, to help you keep them safe on the planet. And life is a way to do that.
Well, these silhouettes in the social and political landscapes that you're trying to portray with your art, you mentioned earlier that you have exhibited these collections in the Seattle Art Museum, but I also read somewhere online that in the past you've had them featured in Tacoma, Portland Art Museums, and Chrysler. This is the Chrysler in another state, I believe.
Yeah, that it will be at the Chrysler, and that's in Virginia.
Right, Museum.
And I have had in my galleries in New York. So I've shown these things around the country.
And you also have had them exhibited at the Atlas Institute of Art, Microsoft Campus, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Washington State, and Seattle City Public Arena. So you have had your collections featured in quite a few of public and also private domain, but this is quite a substantial collection or collections, as well as attest to your versatility in medium and able to connect to a variety of cross-section of society. So we like to know also how much influence did school bring into your art, or did this come naturally from your soul, from your being? How much of that did you incorporate from learned teaching, such as the University of Washington or the University of Grenoble? Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Grenoble? Okay. Tell us about that.
Well, I just think that, I always have made things. So that came naturally, but I was interested in formal education. I was interested in what people might learn when you're going and working with people who have been working all their lives in terms of apprenticing with them and seeing how they manage to succeed in the world. And I think that's what I learned at university. I learned how to learn. I was able to expose myself to different kinds of artwork, to different kinds of literature. And I feel very fortunate that I got to do that. But in the end, getting up every morning and coming to your studio, making work and trying to make it be a viable path in the world is something I've had to do on my own, because it's not necessarily a mainstream kind of an activity.
Right.
And I feel fortunate, and I think my resume is long because I'm old.
We're all getting there.
If you live a long time, you'll have a long resume.
Right. I understand you grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so a lot of your work probably reflect the local, Pacific Northwest political climate and events. So are there artists around here that influence your career and your work?
Well, I'm influenced by lots of people,
Right,
but
the
I did
Pacific
study at the university, and I worked with Jacob Lawrence, who was a professor there at the university. He was a very close friend, and I think I'm quite influenced by his work, and also Michael Spafford, who was another one of my professors, quite influenced by his work. And I'm influenced by my friends. I'm influenced by music. I'm influenced when I go to the theater, because the theater is one of my loves. I love going to the theater. And so because, it's staged drama. And I feel like I try to take from that dramatic art form and have it relate to how I might put drama into a 2-dimensional or a 3-dimensional space if I'm making something that's large enough for someone to walk through. And I like to build things. I'm a builder, so I build.
Now, when you say theater, are you talking about musicals, plays, opera, ballet? What kind of theater?
Well, I love all kinds of theater. Of course, I love musicals, but I also love, dramatic theater. I mean, I love August Wilson. I love, I love things where there's dialogue and where people are talking and where people are working out their everyday lives. In, Arthur Miller. It's crazy. You want to understand about America? Watch that guy. People are just sad when they can't succeed, and even when they do succeed, they're not sure what to do with their success. So I love that kind of stuff. And I just go to theater. I'll go to a play even if I don't know who it's by, because I want to give it a chance. And that's what I feel about my own work. I want people to come and take a look and just give me a chance, because maybe there'll be something there that you find of interest, even if you don't know who I am.
Right. Your work reflects several different mediums in art, including prints, vessels, sculptures, paper cuts, paintings, and I think there's more. And we saw some of your paper cuts as well as sculptures. And what do you call the bowl that was made by blown glass?
I call those my story vessels.
Right. Okay. So what is your favorite medium to work with?
My favorite medium to work with is the one that I need to tell the story I'm telling. And if I can do it in paper, I'll do it in paper if it's best suited. It's like you write, you interview, and that's what gets you to the story.
Yes.
And sometimes if I don't have the space, then I'll do a 2D work. If I need more to explain it, I'll write something about it. It's whatever I have at hand that I feel I have control of the medium, and the medium is part of the delivery. It's never about the paper. It's always about the story.
So you were at one point a director for the Northwest African American Museum. How long were you in that role, and why did you step down?
Well, I think I was there about 5 years, and I was done. I did my job. My job was to come and get it organized, get it set up, find it a place on the landscape, and then when you're done, you're done.
Right.
So I'm happy with the job I did, and it was a wonderful, terrifying experience. Starting any kind of nonprofit is a terrifying experience, and but it's living on beyond my time, which is really a testament to the fact that the idea continues to live. So I'm happy.
So our time is up. Just 30 seconds. What is your next project?
My next project is just to continue to explore. I'm finishing in the project at Yale University, and I just say stay tuned. Lots of stuff happening.
That's wonderful. So you currently have an exhibit right now, the Geography of Innocence, featuring at the Seattle Art Museum at the moment. So everyone, come and visit the museum and see Barbara Earl Thomas' work. Have a good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me on our show.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Okay.
This is Paul Pearson, host